Hi, Charles X. White. We are broadcasting our 2018 show, Community Views and Solutions. I'm your host, and this may be our only last broadcast for 2018. We are preparing at Charity Productions for the 2019 season. Today, I just want to have a conversation. It's a lot going on in America. It's a lot going on all over the globe. But I want to bring it down to your neighborhood and just have a conversation. And this is not necessarily intellectual or academic, even though parts of it might include or breeze by that. I just want you to just kind of roll with me. If you may want to get a paper and pencil, maybe. It's not that deep. But I want to deal with the season that we're in right now and the frenzy that we're in and the complex situations that are impacting us and when I say us, I mean the black community primarily, and anybody else that it affects. Today was one of our community partnership exchange breakfasts. These breakfasts are quarterly in two north and south parts of the city, and they're based on community issues, solutions, and the vehicle that we work with are civic clubs and churches. We have done things and do things like partnering with civic clubs and churches for the mobile food bank, where we distribute 10,000 pounds of food, and the food we get as a participant with the Houston Food Bank. It seems to me that there are some solutions and avenues for the black community to come out of a condition that has paralyzed the thinking and the action of us as a mass community. Now, for anybody that's in the audience that may want to say something like, "Well, he talking some militant talk. He talking what he talking about?" Well, this is what I'm talking about. Being pro-black is not anti anything else. And when you look at the statistics over a 60-year span of time, it would make you want to ask the question, why is this group of people at the bottom of everything negative and at the top of everything negative? That's not an oxymoron, that's just what it is. We got the highest dropout rate. We got the highest percentage of any ethnic group in prison, unemployment, dying off, health. Just any one of those items you want to talk about as a category. How did we get there? Why are we there? And then why do we stay? We have some people that are considered the brightest minds on the planet. But I want you to think in a common sense mode with me today. And I'm going to start with Rodney Ellis, my good friend. Well, last time I checked, that was my good friend. May not be my good friend after this, but he's a good guy. He's a brilliant guy. And I told Rodney one time, we were talking, I said, "Rodney, you know what?" I said, "Man, that tax-free weekend," I said, that's brilliant. I don't even know how you came up with that, Rodney. I said, "But what I don't understand is how you can come up with all that." And it's helping a lot of people. You have to understand, it is helping. This is not a knock, this is just a dilemma, an optic dilemma. Then why does the black community look like it is? Schools closing, food deserts. Today I want to kind of explore how we got to where we are, and maybe an exit strategy that may make sense to some. And when I say common sense, let me give you this example of a common sense strategy. Crime, after-school programs, or continuing education programs, or continuing social development programs, or a combination of both, year-round, wraparound services, all these slogans and keywords that convey the thought of improvement and continuing your life cycle in being a good citizen, contributing to society economically, socially, in all the other positive ways. But it seems like the black community as a group, we have a lot of people of success. Of course, we have former President Obama. We always want to point to the shining star. But what about the shining stars that are twinkling? You know, they're not shining bright all the time. You know, Obama is shining. But you got a lot of stars twinkling. The way schools used to work is that a principal at an elementary school became a principal of a junior high school, then a principal of a high school. Had a long tenure, maybe 30, 40 years. That one principal knew a host of the families, generations, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother in some cases, all went through that same principal at one level or another. That principal, that one principal, had to manage a facility, normally a large physical plant. They managed a budget. They managed people. And they dealt with situations from one end of the day to the other end of the day. They dealt with legal matters. They dealt with a lot of things. And they became icons in the community. And they became a resource and a reference in the community. So you got a lot of, maybe not now because the system of how principals are promoted is a little different. But suppose you got all the principals that retired and said, and you got all the politicians that are at the federal level, state level, county level, and city level. You got all the people, the politicians. And they came into a room and said, look, we got a high crime rate. We got a high unemployment rate. We got a high whatever. Here's how we're going to address it. We're going to bring all the principals together and we're going to get funding from each level of government that would be a sustained amount of funding for 10 to 20 to 30 years. And start with 6th grade students and nurture them all the way through college. But now you have a group that's trusted, have experience with running a plant, managing people, managing resources, and managing a budget. That seems to me that would be a good place to start to arrest some of the crisis situations that are in the black community. Now, you know, that's just a common sense thought that could be put into action. But what you have seen over the last 60 years, particularly the last 35, all the little community agencies and groups and organizations have dried up on the vine, one, because of funding, two, because of lack of resources. So they dried up. So they don't even exist. So and then you have the United Ways coming in, taking over, and they'll get the money and provide the service. So it's not a cycle of social development with these larger non-governmental agencies, it's almost like the big box store versus the hardware store. That's the neighborhood store. That's just one common sense example. November 6th. I'm still going to deal with how and common sense. November 6, 2018. The news commentators are saying that's a turning point, the midterm election. It's important. My question is, why do we keep voting in elected officials that are not representing the taxpayer, and why are certain taxpayers getting less tax-based service? Now, I'm sure taxpayers in the black community and any community would ask that kind of question. Well, how are my tax dollars at work? The emphasis now is on voting. It's on voting, particularly because of this midterm election. How has the black community been taught some of the finer parts, essential parts of why they're voting and to maximize their voting? Midterm elections, why is that important? Now, let me use this first slide. Voting a stolen legacy. Voting, and this slide with the picture of Thomas Mundy. Thomas Mundy was the first African American to vote in 1824. Now, let me take one step back. We have been taught, black people, all people, that voting power, vote, vote, vote. Well, what happens if your vote is not the best vote? What happens if your vote for the same person over and over and over, you still don't see the changes in your neighborhood that's changing and the other changes compared to other neighborhoods? What's up with that? I'm saying part of the reason we don't get the highest level of representation from the people that we vote for, black or white, or Hispanic, or Asian, is because we don't understand the whole process. How did we get taught the value of public policy and voting? When did we get taught how to do the research on the candidates? I don't remember a time period and an institution that taught us in the black community the importance of researching the history of a candidate. I don't remember that. It may have happened, and someone may call in at 713-807-1794 and enlighten the audience, but in this town, Houston, Texas, I don't remember that institution or time period where that was a sustainable effort to enlighten the voters on the process of public policy and how to select a candidate that would represent your interests. Well, what am I talking about? Why am I talking about this? Well, I'm talking about it because it's a voting season. It's also relative to a condition that black people find themselves in. It's always at the bottom. Yes, you always have people that's exceptions to the rule. and we have those. But I'm talking about us as a mass, and they're always us as a mass. So I'm trying to share with you in my common sense way some points on why we are here and how we may be able to start thinking about we have to make a serious change in how we approach voting. Let me give you a timeline. 1865 was the emancipation. The key component that you needed to vote was to own land. We couldn't own land. You had to be a landowner. Then, after we started owning land, it was a tool called poll tax. You had to pay to vote. Poll tax in Texas officially ended and was ratified in 2009. But the first order went in to abolish the poll tax in 1955, thereabout. Look at all of the changes that we had to go through to vote. Why? Because of the color of our skin. I mean, these are some things in my older age bracket. I am considering now how I wasted time, as many of us have, and how we didn't look at some things that we could have done different and better that would help us as a mass. Voting in 2018, in my view, is almost like voting in 1918. We are blindly voting. For those who do that, pull the party ticket without looking at and selecting individual candidates or researching individual candidates that's the best choice for you and your neighborhood. And we don't get into political clubs. One political club that black people don't get involved in mass is political action committees. When did we have a class on political action committees? I'm not talking about the government classes that we got in college, where they said what a political action committee is. But where do you see them functionally? What we did see over a period of time, maybe 30 years or so, was power at the union level, which is some kind of way could be associated with it as a political action committee. But is a pure political tool, most of us don't get involved. I deal with civic clubs all the time. It's not a lot of information that you can have a discussion about political action committees, especially if you go back 15 years. So for those of you who are looking at our condition as a people, I'm going to give you a couple of ideas as it relates to, we just need to make a change. You know, don't vote for somebody because you like the way they talk, or not vote for somebody because you don't like the way they talk. What is that person's track record as a defender of the people's rights, making sure the tax dollars are spent in the neighborhood by your elected official, that he or she is representing you. This map that's up there now, that map is a map that deals with north, south, east, and west, and it shows a pattern of what the vulnerable population is in Houston, Harris County. That map. That's the length and breadth of it. Those are 25, 27 zip codes. And you can go back in time and see that map and the people in that map and that geography has been labeled as at risk, high risk, with unmet needs, underserved, all those negative terms that are created and given by government. Now, that map, could you bring it back full screen? That is the original footprint that we took from the City of Houston Health Department. And they did a GIS configuration and with their research to identify the most vulnerable populations, whether it was medical or whatever it was. And then what we did at Charity Productions, we put the zip codes to it. And those are the zip codes to the right. Now you can click on those zip codes if you had the PowerPoint, and it would take you to the census tract or the demographics of that particular zip code. And you would find some of the health disparities, educational disparities, crime disparities. You could click on each one and it'll take you to that section. Now we're modifying that for 2019 to pull out and extract a lot of other data. But when you look at that kind of profile, and it's just like it never moves to the green needle. It never moves to the positive side of the board. It's generational, intergenerational, multi-generational poverty, and all those negative terms that governments assign. Now, the question should be, or sometimes the assigned statement for those neighborhoods where that's just how it is. The poor will be, you hear that phrase, the poor will be with us always, and that's a biblical phrase. But one time somebody said that to me, and I said, it says, so yeah, okay, it says the poor will be with us always, will be with us always. But it doesn't tell you that you can't improve the percentage. It doesn't tell you that you can't reduce the percentage. If the percentage of the people are poor or into that poverty level is 40%, there's a formula that could take it to 30%. There's a formula that could take it to 20%. But they just give us those cliches about, well, they'll be with us. Well, it's just generational. Well, they don't have any. Well. It's always an answer that's a non-answer. And until and unless we start thinking about it, the escape plan, the escape hatch. And if you notice, and I'm not talking about the marchers that's on their way from the Central and South America to the Texas border, but I want to use the example about the British exit. They call it BritX. People all over the globe are showing more signs of being dissatisfied, and they want to improve their living condition. Now, the government, they are mismanaging money, and then they come back and ask you for more money, and then you come back and vote for it. And then they mess up that money, and they tell you and tell me, well, it's a work in progress. Well, you just messed up $1 billion. And you're going to tell us it's a work in progress? And then we don't collectively come together and get an assessment, go to one of the higher institutions of learning and ask them to give us a political analysis of what's going on with the budget? That's what could happen. That's what should happen in the Black community. With all of the schools that have closed from 2002 to 2012, and 60+% of them were in the Black community, I do not recall any Black, white, Asian, or Hispanic elected official calling for a blue ribbon task force on education. With all of the low performing schools. And you have to understand, there are some administrative tricks and traps that are catch-22s and trap doors that put schools in a position to close. I know some of you might say, oh man, don't talk like that. That doesn't happen. That's just the children are not studying and the parents don't this, that, and the other. It's not a blanket answer like that. It's more complex than that. My time in the school district, my time working with roughly 15 different school districts and dealing with the parent involvement component or Title I component. If I dealt with 7,000 parents, I did not want to run across one parent that didn't want to get the best education possible for their child. They might have been loud, but they still wanted the best education possible for their child. Their hair may not have been combed, but they still wanted the best education for their child. They might have been on welfare, but they still wanted the best education for their child. And then the people that have the responsibility to provide that, obviously, they fail. But then the buck is passed to the parent, and it's a blame the victim syndrome. There are so many things that we can do as a group, including the school district, including government, that if we just worked on one problem at a time or in sets of threes, if they're related. Education and crime is a combination, or education, crime, and health is a combination. We got the brain power. I mean, just think about it. Whatever happened to make Rodney Ellis come up with that tax-free weekend, you can't say that that's not brilliant. You can't say it doesn't help people. When John F. Kennedy said we were going to the moon, they put the best minds together to figure out the calculus and all the other formulas that's related to make it so. Why can't we take each negative category as a team, as a collective, and say we're going to reduce this by 10% for the next 3 years until we reach the level of saying this is the standard that it seems like it's going to work out to where the dropout rate is always going to be hover around this percentage and that or that percentage, but we can reduce it over a period of years and put it on a performance chart and then chronicle the solutions and the strategies that went in to do that. And if you go with a group of sixth graders, in 5 years, they'll be juniors. And you can track them for that period of time and then put them in a career path, whether it's vocational, professional, or IT, or whichever field it might be in, put them on a career track. To me, that makes sense enough to start with the people that are charged with have the education to produce solutions of this magnitude with sustainability, but for whatever reason, in the Black community, it's not happening. It hasn't happened for 60 years. That is a subject that should be discussed in every home that's affected by it. Why is the ditch in Sunnyside 6 feet deep? Why did the man get a citation for not maintaining the ditch when the ditch is maintained by the city of Houston? There are some solutions, questions, and answers that we could fix a lot of small problems by asking the right question. But the problem is we don't know what the right question is to ask. Could you go to that next slide? Now, this slide. This is a very interesting slide. Now, let me explain how this is an interesting slide to me. The first slide that I showed you was the end product of looking at a footprint from that slide that the City of Houston Health Department created. That's the original one. After we took that original one and then laid zip codes over the pattern, then we looked up poverty rates from different research. Some of it came from the Harris County Public Health report. One was a crime statistic report. Another one was a housing report. Now this is Houston Harris County. And if you take the footprint from that original map and then the zip code map, the pattern is almost the same. It is the same core pattern, and it has different branches depending on which particular category that you overlay. So for any of the listening audience that's trying to figure out what am I talking about, this is what I'm talking about. It's the same pattern, whatever category, in the same zip codes. How does that sustain itself without government design? It has to be intelligence to make it in that one strip over and over and over again. I'm just using common sense with baseline data, third-party research. I didn't make the map. I got some smart people to work with me that overlaid that, and they put it all together. I just had the basic question and the footprint with the zip codes. I had enough sense to go and pull some research. They laid the chart out. What's that next slide? Oh yeah. Now, a common word phrase in academia, education, government is transformative. They talk about transformative leadership, transformative this, transformative that, strategic plan, all of these fancy words. But if you look at that footprint and deal with a timeline, there's no change in those footprints. So what would I recommend to people that have been overlooked and underserved with low-performing political leadership? Overlooked, underserved, and straddled with low-performing leadership. Now, if anybody can say to me that what I just said is off track totally, call in and explain to me why we as a group should not be holding the elected officials more accountable through public policy action items that will address those statistical concerns in 6 different categories that have the same footprint for almost 60 plus years. If you can explain to me why we should not be discussing that, call in. In 2019, I'm preparing myself to challenge, and challenge is the right word, but it also gives out like you know, I know more than you. I don't know more than nobody. But I'm going to ask these common sense questions, and I'm going to look at the research that I have, and let's ask the elected officials, why do we have this over this period of time? And based on what all this research says, this is our conclusion. And then let him explain to me, or her to explain it to us, where we are off track, okay, with what we're talking about moving forward. We're not talking about yesterday to stay in yesterday, but yesterday is connected to now, and now is connected to the future. So you can't have one without talking about the other because they are interwoven together. It's a continuum. So it's not about being the smartest apple in the room. It's about being one of the apples that works together and recognize that we do need to work together to try to figure out how to keep the tree healthy. Because our tree right now is very unhealthy, according to the census tracts. So right now, the county is going around and the city to talking about this is an election. For an example, let's just take Prop A. Prop A is the drainage tax. Under Mayor Parker, that came up. Under Mayor Parker, it was said that that money would be in a lockbox. It was said that that money would be used only for drainage and streets. I read a report from a guy named Bill Frazier, CPA. And Bill Frazier's research indicated that there is no lockbox. Everybody's looking for the lockbox. They've been looking for the lockbox ever since Parker talked about it, and no one has found it to this day. So, I mean, if you want me to send you some of that research from Bill Frazier and others, you can email me the request at cpxw at hotmail.com. And maybe we will do another show after the election. And I'm going to invite Bill Frazier and a couple of other people to join me. And we're going to talk about it. And we're going to let them share their research with you. And then you wrestle with the 30-second soundbite that the politicians give us without any paper, without any serious approach in understanding figures. See, when you're dealing with the magnitude of numbers and volume and money we're talking about, you're not going to learn about it in a twinkling of an eye. But these other fellas and people that have done this research, they can give you the threads. They can give you the nucleus of information and where and how to analyze it, because they are subject matter experts. And maybe we'll do one other show, maybe have to run into two. And maybe Mark will tape a couple of shows and let them run till the end of the year. And after the November 6th election, we'll come back and look at that and just break that drainage fee and tax down from the court case to what Mayor Parker said to what Mayor Turner is saying about it. We just want to analyze it, because when politicians come to the community, they're only giving us one side. And everyone in the audience ought to know that these politicians gonna tell a lie. I mean, I don't mean it like that. I mean, they're going to give us their truth. I don't want to be accused of, well, I'm going to be accused. I'm always accused. But I want to try to tone it down a little bit. And I just want to say, their truth. You know what, Trump said, I really try to tell the truth. I like to tell the truth all the time, something like that. They're having a field day with that. But what we want to do now, what I want to do, is try to maybe get you to thinking. You don't have to jump up and join 25 civic clubs or any community groups. Just think about how, let me give you this one. Houston ISD budget, their budget, property taxes make up 72.6% of the entire budget. But there are some schools that you will go to and talk to the principal as though like you want to find out some information, and most of the time the question is, do you have a child in my school? If your answer is no, then you are put in a category of you don't need to know and don't have the right to ask me this or that. But see, if that did happen to you, just do a test. Do a scientific test and go to your school and just say you want to meet with the principal and talk, so and so, and just see if anyone asks you that question. Or you may get different results. They may ask you, are you a taxpayer? Well, if they ask you, are you a taxpayer, then that means they are on the ball, because it really doesn't matter if you have a child in school. Because unless if you don't take advantage of that tax waiver after you get a certain age, you can have a child not in a school and still be paying school tax. So whether you got a child in school or not is incidental to the fact. You're a taxpayer. You are the one that contributes to the budget that pays their salary. That's what is meant when they say they work for us. Same thing with the city, same thing with the county, same thing with the state and the federal government. Now, do you have, or is your elected official one of the elected officials that only comes out certain times of the year? And is your elected official one of the ones that wants to do all of these grandioso things with toys and turkeys and all of that stuff, when their job, what you elected them to do, you didn't elect them to pass out turkeys and toys? What the hell is going on? You elected them to represent you and to write policy that improves and maintains the quality of life in your neighborhood. That's what you elected them to do. That is their job. Not having all these special promotions. This is a way that it could happen. Instead of them trying to be a quasi-service provider seasonally, why don't they get together with all the civic clubs and say, look, because see, they don't manufacture turkeys. They don't manufacture toys. They don't manufacture air conditioners, fans, and all of that, heaters. They get them from somewhere. Now, they don't trust you. Y'all listen to what I'm telling you. They don't trust you. They don't respect you. What do you mean? This is what I mean. You come to these meetings in the community and you hug on them and you do this and you do that. But why don't you pull a group of the civic clubs together and make a partnership with the agency that you're getting all this stuff from? Don't do it just at this time of the year. Find out a way to be sustainable. Did you know that if you had I'm not sure, but I know 4 years ago with the food bank, when we first started working with them, might have been 5 years ago, I was trying to figure out how can we deliver more food? Because the food bank has a truck, the truck comes out, you have 20, 25 people, it takes about that many people that volunteer and help unload the truck and put all of the vegetables or the commodities in a box, to distribute it out. So I was talking to the guy at the food bank one day that's the manager over all of that, and he told me, he said, well, if you had your own 18-wheeler and a cab, we could get you 10,000 pounds of food a day. Well, why can't the elected officials use their clout, work with the community, work with the civic club, work with the little community-based organization and the church, and get 10 or 12 of them trucks? And then you make a big dent in the food deserts. H-E-B or whoever, Kroger, whoever. But they're so busy doing those esoteric seasonal sound bites and promotions to make it look like they are serving the people. I can buy my own lunch. I can grow my own turnips. Get me public policy that's going to keep the schools open. Get me public policy that's going to put jobs in the community. The biggest missing link in the black community is employment, business, new business. That's what's missing. Where is the community meetings on jobs? with all these career politicians. These are some simple, basic questions that we need to be asking our elected officials. Don't not let them come to a meeting and you don't ask them some serious questions. The problem is we don't ask the right question. What was the last legislation you passed that dealt with jobs coming to this zip code? We got to get serious about the question. We can't be nicey, lovey-dovey. One time I was talking to a politician, and he used, this is to me it's a cliche, and he used the term like, I got passionate. And you say when you get passionate, it say, wait a minute, don't get emotional. They don't say that. And when they say don't get emotional, the implication is in that statement is that when you emotional, you irrational, you're not making sense, whatever. And my response was, I can be passionate and factual. Don't dismiss what I'm saying in a category to where, you don't know what you're saying, you're just getting emotional now, calm down. I don't need to calm down. I'm dealing with facts, and I'm committed to what I'm trying to do to find out, to improve the condition. And I'm coming to you to talk about it. It don't need to be one person, it need to be 20,000 people asking all the elected officials at every level. So when John Culberson comes to your meeting, that's his name, I believe, Culberson, the congressman, when Beto come to your community, don't be all in the hype. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the drums and the music and the balloons. Get to the question. How you gonna fix this? Are you gonna pull in Sheila Jackson Lee? You gonna pull in Al Green? You gonna pull Culberson in? You gonna pull Ted Poe in? How y'all gonna fix this? Don't keep letting them politicians come to your meeting just giving you a sack of rice. I'm saying that 2019 needs to be a change link. And the change link needs to start at the bottom. And if you don't have but one question, next time you go to a political meeting, make sure you get that question answered. And if they tell you we're running out of time and you need to write your question down at the beginning of the meeting, middle or the end, you ask them, where are you going to post the answers to all these questions? Because that's a tactic too, a trick and a trap. They come to me and ask you to write all this stuff down. They ought to have a book on lessons learned from community institutional knowledge, because you in the community have institutional knowledge. You know something that they don't know. But they get your question and or recommendation, but it doesn't go anywhere. It's in cyberspace or in the shredder. You got to get the answers to the question and then come together collectively in your neighborhood. Yeah, you got some Hispanics in your neighborhood now. Go get them. They're in your neighborhood. They affected negatively just like you being affected negatively. Don't worry about whatever. Go get them. I don't care who in your neighborhood. It's your neighborhood. And if you don't understand it's your neighborhood and do something, do the basics. I'm not asking you to write a position paper. I'm asking you to identify your one item. Make sure you hold the elected official that's responsible for that, and those that's not responsible for it, but it's in their district. Go up the chain, up and down the chain. Get all of them to give you an answer. Make them talk to each other about the solution for what your one problem is. And if 800 of y'all do that in one neighborhood, all your problems be solved. But all you got to do is ask the right question. Don't be looking at me and talking about me, what I can't do, what I didn't do, and I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. We got to do it. And the we is me and you. You do it where you are, I do it where I am. But don't keep taking this stuff off of people that work for you, work for me. We not being mean. I see women and men in grocery stores arguing over $2, 15 cents, 30 cents about their change that somebody mischarged them. These politicians been mischarging you for years and you ain't said nothing. Or you haven't said enough. Hey, we're going to see you again. I'm going to come back. I'm going to invite Bill Frazier and the rest of the folks, and we're going to analyze a lot of things. This is Charles X. White signing off with Charity Productions, Community Views and Solutions, and the largest community partnership breakfast in the state of Texas. We'll see you next time on Community Views and Solutions. Thank you for listening.